Welcome to these gentle, soothing stories for sleep. I'm so glad you are here. Whether you are preparing to drift off to sleep, relaxing after a long day, or simply seeking a quiet companion for your thoughts, you have found a safe and peaceful place. Tonight, we will begin a journey into one of the most mysterious and intimate experiences we all share, an exploration of the quiet question: why do we dream? Before we begin our journey into this gentle dark, I would love to know where you are listening from tonight, or perhaps a simple, quiet feeling from your day. Please feel free to leave a comment below. Wherever you are, I hope you are feeling comfortable, relaxed, and ready to explore something gentle yet extraordinary. And if you find these soothing scientific journeys interesting or pleasant, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps more souls who are searching for peace find their way here. Imagine a single mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam that streams through an old window, and within that tiny glittering particle, an entire universe of untold stories is held. What if your mind, in the deep quiet of the night, becomes just like that, a small, contained space that somehow learns to hold an infinite cosmos? We often think of dreams as being entirely our own, a private gallery of images and feelings, but our journey tonight begins much farther away than that. Out in the cold, silent expanse of space, under the watchful gaze of a billion ancient stars. Picture yourself standing in a vast, open field, far from the glow of any city, on a moonless and perfectly clear night. The air is cool and still against your skin, and the only sound is the gentle rhythm of your own breath and the impossibly distant whisper of the cosmos. Above you is a velvet darkness so profound that it feels less like a ceiling and more like a depth. A fathomless ocean, and scattered across it is a fine, shimmering dust of light. These are not the few dozen stars you might see from a town or a suburb. This is the full, breathtaking majesty of the Milky Way, a river of light that flows from one horizon to the other. And as you stand there, wrapped in the profound silence, a sense of immense peace and timelessness washes over you. You are looking at light that has traveled for years, for centuries, for millennia, just to end its long journey in your eyes. This nightly spectacle, this silent conversation between our small world and the vast universe, holds the first gentle clue to the nature of our dreams. The reason that this celestial display feels so ancient is because it is, quite literally, a portrait of the past. When we look at the closest star to our own sun, Proxima Centauri, we are not seeing it as it is right now, but as it was over 4 years ago. That is how long it took for its light, traveling at the unimaginable speed of 300,000 kilometers per second, to cross the void and reach us. The light from the stars in the constellation of Orion's belt began its journey around the time the Roman Empire was at its peak. And the light from the Andromeda galaxy, that faint, fuzzy patch you can just barely see with the naked eye, is a ghost from 2.5 million years in the past, a time before modern humans even walked the Earth. Every star is a message from a different time, arriving in our present moment. In a beautiful and profound way, our dreams work just like this starlight. They gather fragments from the deep past of our own lives, a face you remember from childhood, the feeling of a particular sweater you wore as a teenager, a snatch of a song you heard last week, and they project these old lights, these old memories, onto the inner screen of the present moment. A dream is a conversation with your own history, a place where different moments from your past can meet and mingle in a new constellation. Just as the night sky is a mosaic of different ages, so too is the landscape of a dream, a collage of your own personal yesterdays. But the universe offers us another, deeper parallel. If you could zoom in, far beyond what any telescope can see, to the very fabric of space-time itself, scientists theorize you would find something called quantum foam. It is a turbulent, chaotic realm where tiny particles of matter and energy are constantly bubbling into existence and vanishing again in unimaginably small fractions of a second. The deep vacuum of space, which appears so empty and calm, is at its most fundamental level a sea of spontaneous, random potential. This underlying chaos, this constant, quiet fizz of creation, is what gives birth to everything we see. From this randomness, over billions of years, gravity has coaxed particles into gas clouds, squeezed gas clouds into stars, and arrange stars into the glorious architecture of galaxies. The universe, it seems, builds order and beauty out of a foundation of pure, unpredictable chance. This is, perhaps, the most perfect metaphor for the dream state. When we fall asleep, we disconnect from the orderly flow of sensory information from the outside world. Our brain is left in a kind of internal vacuum, and in that quiet, it begins to generate its own spontaneous, random patterns of neural firing. Like the quantum foam, our sleeping mind begins to bubble with fleeting images, stray emotions, and disconnected thoughts. A dream is the brain's beautiful, instinctive attempt to find a signal in its own noise, to weave a story, however nonsensical, from the chaotic fabric of its own internal energy. It is finding shapes in the clouds of its own making. We are, in a very real sense, small universes experiencing ourselves from the inside. The same majestic principles of building pattern from chaos, of receiving light from the distant past, and of finding meaning in what appears to be random, are not just happening in the cosmos around us, but also within the cosmos inside us. Each night, when we close our eyes, we are not shutting the world out, but are instead opening an inner door to a place where our own personal starlight can shine. Our dreams are a private cosmic echo, a reminder that we are woven from the same mysterious, chaotic, and beautiful fabric as the stars. And as this starlight from the past paints the canvas of the night sky, another kind of light begins to flicker within us, preparing to illuminate a stage that is built for an audience of one. Have you ever felt that strange and frustrating sensation in a dream? That desperate, urgent need to run away from something, or to cry out for help, only to find that your legs are made of lead, heavy and unmoving, and your voice is a silent gasp of air. This feeling, so common in the landscape of our dreams, is not just a psychological trick or a symbol of our waking anxieties. It is the ghostly echo of a profound biological event, a nightly miracle of self-preservation that allows the mind to run free while the body remains in a perfect, peaceful sanctuary. It is the first step in preparing the great, silent theatre where our dreams will be performed. The journey into this theatre begins with a slow, gentle letting go. As you lie down to sleep, your body begins a graceful descent. Your breath, which may have been quick and shallow from the stresses of the day, deepens and finds a slow, steady, tidal rhythm. Your heart rate begins to slow, beat by steady beat, and the subtle tension you hold in your shoulders, your jaw, and your hands begins to dissolve, as if melting away into the mattress. The world outside, with its sharp sounds and bright lights, fades into a distant murmur. The brain, like a careful theatre director, is preparing for the nightly performance. It begins to dim the house lights of your conscious awareness, guiding you down through the early, light stages of sleep, deeper and deeper into the quiet dark. This gentle descent is not a passive process of the brain simply running out of energy. It is an active and deliberate shutdown orchestrated by a tiny, elegant switch deep within the brain's ancient structures. In a region called the hypothalamus, there is a small cluster of neurons known as the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus, or the VLPO. You can think of this as the master sleep switch for the entire brain. While we are awake, our brain is kept in a state of alertness by a network of arousal centers, which are constantly sending out signals that say, stay awake, be vigilant. The VLPO, however, does the opposite. As it becomes active, it sends out powerful inhibitory signals that effectively silence these arousal centers. It is a beautiful biological design called mutual inhibition, a kind of flip-flop switch. Either the arousal system is on and the VLPO is off, or the VLPO is on and the arousal system is off. There is no in-between. The onset of sleep is the moment this switch flips, a gentle but decisive hand pressing down on the main dimmer for the entire nervous system, allowing the theatre of the mind to finally fall into a profound and necessary quiet. Once the theatre is quiet, and the audience of your conscious self is deeply asleep, the director prepares for the most vivid part of the show, the stage known as rapid eye movement, or REM sleep. This is when most of our memorable, narrative dreams occur. But for the mind to be safely set free to fly, to fight, To explore impossible worlds, the body must be anchored. This is where the true miracle happens. A small region in the brainstem, called the pons, sends a powerful signal down the spinal cord to the motor neurons that control the body's voluntary muscles. This signal is a command for paralysis, a state known as REM, atonia. It actively blocks the brain's commands to move from ever reaching the muscles of your limbs, your torso, and your neck. It is the director of the play, making absolutely certain that the actors on stage, no matter how dramatic their performance, cannot leap off the stage and into the real world. This is why, when you dream you are running for your life, your legs only twitch, faintly, if at all. The command to run is being sent by your brain's motor cortex, but the signal is intercepted at the spinal cord. It is a brilliant, evolutionary fail-safe, a protective embrace that allows us to experience the most intense adventures imaginable, all from the complete safety of our own bed. This nightly paralysis is what makes REM sleep so wonderfully strange, a condition that scientists call paradoxical sleep. If you were to look at a recording of someone's brainwaves during this stage, using a machine called an electroencephalogram, or an EEG, you would see a pattern of activity that is fast, chaotic, and low in amplitude. In many ways, it looks almost identical to the brainwaves of someone who is wide awake, alert, and actively thinking. The brain is on fire with activity. The visual centers are creating entire worlds from scratch. The emotional centers are generating profound feelings of joy or fear, and the memory centers are weaving together disparate threads of our past. It is a mind that is, for all intents and purposes, fully awake. And yet, at the same time, the body it inhabits is more still and unresponsive to the outside world than at any other point in the sleep cycle. A mind racing in a body of stone. This is the paradox. And in this paradox, we can find a deep sense of biological wisdom. This nightly paralysis is an act of profound trust that our body has in our mind. It is a built-in sanctuary, a guarantee that the stories we need to explore in our dreams can be experienced without consequence. The fear you feel in a nightmare is real, but it cannot make you run into a wall. The joy you feel in a flying dream is real, but it cannot make you leap from your bed. The theatre is safe. The play, no matter how wild, can go on. The mind is set free precisely because the body is held in a state of such gentle, protective stillness. But what fuels this vibrant, inner world? While the stage is dark and the actors are still, a different kind of life is stirring backstage, mixing potions and elixirs that will soon flood the scene with impossible colors and ghostly feelings. Close your eyes for a moment and, just with your imagination, try to conjure the scent of fresh rain falling on dry, sun-warmed earth. Or perhaps you can recall the exact taste of a specific candy from your childhood, a sweetness that is tied to 1,000 forgotten afternoons. Where do these vivid, multi-sensory experiences come from when there is nothing actually there to taste or to smell? They arise from the deep, enchanted garden of the mind, a place that is not governed by the laws of physics, but by the subtle and powerful language of chemistry. We often think of the brain as a kind of computer, a machine of wires and electricity. But in the world of dreams, it is far more like a vast, dark greenhouse at midnight. In this magical place, invisible mists and pollens are released into the air, and with each one, the entire atmosphere of the garden changes. One chemical might cause impossible, luminous flowers to bloom in the dark. Another might make the very air hum with a forgotten melody. A third might fill the garden with a profound sense of sorrow or an inexplicable joy. These mists and pollens are the neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that paint the masterpieces of our dreams. The vibrant, high-definition quality of our dream world, its ability to feel so utterly real and immersive, is largely thanks to a chemical called acetylcholine. As we enter REM sleep, the stage where our most cinematic dreams unfold, the brain is flooded with this powerful neurotransmitter. Specialized cells in our brainstem begin to release it in great waves, and this chemical tide washes over key structures deep within our minds. One of the most important of these is the thalamus, which acts as the brain's grand central station for all incoming sensory information. During our waking hours, the thalamus takes in the light from our eyes, the sounds from our ears, and the feelings from our skin, and relays these signals to the higher parts of the brain to be processed. But in the dream state, activated by acetylcholine, the thalamus does something extraordinary. It closes its gates to the outside world and instead begins to listen to the internal chatter of the brain itself. You can think of acetylcholine as the chemical that walks over to the brain's own internal projector and flips the switch to on. Suddenly, the screen of the mind is illuminated with brilliant, clear images and sounds, all generated from the film reels of our own memory and emotion. Yet, as this one chemical rises to create the vividness of the dream, two others are instructed to fall silent, and their absence is just as important as acetylcholine's presence. These are the neuromodulators, serotonin and norepinephrine, and during the day, they act as the logical, rational editors of our conscious mind. They help us to focus our attention, to think in a linear and logical way, and to maintain a stable mood. They are the calm, steadying hands that keep our thoughts organized and tethered to reality. But as we drift into the world of REM sleep, the cells that produce these chemicals almost completely cease their firing. It is as if these two diligent editors of the mind decide to go on a long break, leaving the library of our thoughts completely unattended. Without their guiding influence, the mind is free to make strange, poetic, and entirely illogical connections. This is why, in a dream, you might be having a conversation with your third-grade teacher, who suddenly turns into a cat and begins to fly out the window, and this sequence of events feels perfectly normal. The part of your brain that would normally object, the part that would say, "Wait, that doesn't make any sense," is temporarily and peacefully asleep. The creative, unfiltered poet of the mind is finally free to speak in its native tongue of metaphor and bizarre association. This combination of high acetylcholine and low serotonin creates the perfect chemical storm for our emotions to run free. Deep within the brain's temporal lobes lies the limbic system, the ancient seat of our emotional lives. During REM sleep, key parts of this system, especially the amygdala, which you can think of as the brain's emotional amplifier, become incredibly active. Fueled by the vivid sensory information being generated by the acetylcholine systems, but completely unconstrained by the rational, dampening influence of serotonin and norepinephrine, our feelings in dreams become raw, pure, and powerful. This is why the fear in a nightmare can be the most profound terror you have ever experienced, and the joy in a beautiful dream can feel like an ecstatic, transcendent bliss. We are experiencing our emotions in their most undiluted form. The dream state, then, is a chemically induced form of temporary, natural, and perfectly healthy madness. Our dreams are not just random images playing in our heads. They are chemically painted worlds, meticulously crafted by the rising and falling tides of these invisible molecules. We are, each night, visited by ghosts, but they are not summoned by spirits from some other world. They are the ghosts of our own memories and feelings, summoned by the delicate, shifting balance of the chemistry within our own brains. And as this strange and wonderful chemical tide washes over the intricate architecture of the brain, it begins to sift through the sands of our past, picking up the shells of old memories and the smooth stones of yesterday's experiences, preparing to build them into something new. Have you ever woken up in the morning with a solution to a problem you had been wrestling with for days? The answer arriving not through strenuous effort, but as a quiet gift delivered by the night. Or perhaps you have found that a skill you were practicing, whether playing a piece of music or learning a new language, suddenly feels easier and more natural after a good night's sleep, as if some final, crucial connection has clicked firmly into place. This common experience is a gentle clue that sleep is not a void, not a period of inactivity, but rather a time of profound and diligent work. As we sleep, a quiet librarian walks the silent stacks of our minds, carefully sorting, filing, and making sense of the endless stream of information we gather during the day. Imagine your mind as a grand, ancient library, filled with millions of books. All day long, new deliveries arrive at the front desk. Conversations you have had, things you have read, sights you have seen, feelings you have felt. By the end of the day, the desk is piled high with a chaotic stack of new acquisitions. If they were left there, the library would soon become cluttered and unusable. But at night, after the great doors are locked and the lights are dimmed, the librarian begins the vital work. This librarian is a structure in your brain called the hippocampus, and its job is to manage the flow of new memories. This process, known as memory consolidation, is one of the most important functions of sleep, and it happens in a beautiful two-step dance. During the day, the hippocampus acts as a kind of temporary storage drive, a short-term holding area for the day's new episodic memories. The stories of what happened to you. It rapidly absorbs this new information, but it doesn't have the capacity to hold it for long. Then, during the deep stages of sleep, something remarkable occurs. The hippocampus begins to replay the memories of the day's events, but at an incredibly fast speed. Scientists first discovered this by monitoring the brains of rats. They recorded the firing patterns of specific neurons called place cells in the rats' hippocampi as they learned to run a maze. Later, when the rats were asleep, the scientists saw the exact same sequence of neurons firing again, in the same order, but 20 times faster, as if the brain were fast-forwarding through a recording of the experience. This high-speed replay is the librarian taking each new book off the front desk and quickly reading its summary. But the librarian does not work alone. This nightly replay is actually a form of dialogue, a quiet conversation between the student and the teacher of the mind. The hippocampus, the student, is reciting what it has learned. The neocortex, the vast, wrinkled outer layer of the brain, is the wise old teacher. The neocortex is the main library itself, the place where all of our long-term knowledge and memories are permanently stored. As the hippocampus rapidly replays the day's events, it is essentially transferring these memories, these stories, to the neocortex for stable, long-term storage. This process strengthens the neural connections in the neocortex, integrating the new information into the vast, existing web of what we already know. Our dreams are the strange, echo-filled classroom where this lesson takes place. The bizarre and fragmented narratives we experience are a side effect of this deep, underlying transfer of knowledge. The ghostly images created as memories are shifted from their temporary home to their permanent one. However, the librarian of the mind does more than just file away new information. Just as important is the process of deciding what not to keep. Our brains are bombarded with an overwhelming amount of information every single day, and most of it is trivial. We don't need to remember the pattern on a stranger's shirt or every word of a commercial we overheard. Sleep is also a time for intelligent forgetting, a process called synaptic pruning. You can think of your mind as a beautiful sprawling rose garden. Memories are the connections between your brain cells, the branches of the rose bushes. During sleep, a wise gardener walks through this garden and carefully prunes away the weak, unimportant connections, snipping away the dead leaves and tangled undergrowth. This doesn't destroy the garden. It makes it stronger and healthier, allowing the most important connections, the most beautiful and robust flowers, to thrive and grow. This is why sleep is so crucial for learning. It not only strengthens what is important, but it also clears away the noise, making the essential signal clearer. Sleep, then, is not a passive state of shutdown at all, but rather an active and exquisitely elegant process of curation. Our mind is a library, a classroom, and a garden, and every night, a silent, diligent part of us works to keep it organized, to strengthen its knowledge, and to cultivate its growth. We go to sleep with the chaos of the day, and if we are lucky, we awaken with a little more order, a little more clarity, and a little more space for the day to come. But this librarian, this gardener of the mind, does not work alone. Below the well-lit floors of the library, in the deep, unlit archives that are rarely visited, lies a vast and ancient ocean of forgotten stories and powerful symbols. Think for a moment of the vastness of the ocean. We spend our lives on its surface, sailing in the sunlight, feeling the wind and the spray, charting our courses, and knowing the familiar harbours. But we are always aware that just beneath the keel of our small boat, there are depths we cannot see, a world of darkness, immense pressure, and strange and beautiful life forms that exist beyond our everyday imagination. We know that the sliver of the world we inhabit is resting upon a much larger, much deeper, and much more mysterious reality. What if our own mind has such an ocean? What if the conscious self that we know, The one that is listening to these words right now is merely the sailor on the sunlit surface, while beneath it lies a deep, silent, and powerful inner world. The great pioneers of psychology believed this to be true, and they saw our dreams as a vessel, a kind of bathysphere that could carry us down into these hidden depths. To begin this journey, imagine a slow descent. The bright, clear sunlight of the conscious world begins to fade, and the water around you shifts from a familiar blue to a deep indigo, and then, finally, to a profound and total black. The sounds of the surface world disappear, replaced by a deep, resonant silence, the only sound being the soft beating of your own heart. The pressure builds, a gentle but insistent reminder that you are in a different realm, a place with its own rules. And then, in the darkness, a light begins to glow. A strange, bioluminescent creature drifts past, a being made of pure light and feeling, a living symbol from the abyss. This is the journey into the unconscious mind. The first great cartographer of this inner ocean was Sigmund Freud. While many of his specific theories have since evolved or been replaced, his central idea was a revolutionary one that has shaped our understanding of ourselves ever since. He proposed that the mind was not a single, unified thing, but was composed of layers. The conscious mind, which is the small part we are aware of at any given moment. The preconscious, which holds things we could bring to mind if we tried. And the vast, deep, unconscious, a reservoir of feelings, thoughts, urges, and memories that exist far outside of our conscious awareness. For Freud, this unconscious realm was a place where our deepest and often most difficult wishes and fears were pushed down or repressed. He believed that these hidden contents did not lie dormant, but were constantly trying to find a way to the surface. He famously called our dreams the royal road to the unconscious, for he believed that in the dream state, when the rational censor of the conscious mind was asleep, these hidden feelings could finally express themselves. But they could not do so directly. They had to speak in code, in the language of symbols. A dream, for Freud, was like a bubble rising from the very deepest part of the seabed. By the time it reaches the surface, it is just a simple bubble. But by analyzing the gas within it, one could learn something about the chemistry of the abyss from which it came. Another great explorer, Carl Jung, who was once a student of Freud's, agreed about the existence of this deep ocean, but he believed it went even deeper. He proposed that beneath our personal unconscious, which is formed from our own individual life experiences, there was another, even more profound layer he called the collective unconscious. This, he suggested, was a shared, inherited reservoir of knowledge and imagery that belongs to all of humanity. It is filled with what he called archetypes, universal, primal symbols and figures that reappear in the myths, legends, religions, and fairy tales of every culture throughout history. These are figures like the wise old man, the great mother, the hero on a quest, the shadow self, and the trickster. Jung believed that these archetypes were the fundamental building blocks of the human psyche, and that they often visit us in our dreams. When we dream of being on a great journey, or of battling a dark monster, or of receiving guidance from a mysterious elder, we are not just working through our personal daily struggles. We are, in a sense, tapping into the timeless, universal stories of humanity itself. It is like descending so deep into the ocean of the mind that you find, carved into the very bedrock of the seafloor, ancient patterns and symbols that have been there since the dawn of our species. While modern neuroscience does not use the specific maps drawn by Freud and Jung, the core insight that they shared is now a fundamental principle of cognitive science. The vast majority of our mental processing happens outside of our conscious awareness. Your brain is constantly making calculations, forming associations, and processing emotions on a level that your conscious self, the sailor on the surface, never knows about. Dreams, with their distinct lack of rational, top-down control, provide us with one of the most direct and fascinating windows into these automatic, associative, and non-verbal parts of our mind's operation. They are a genuine glimpse into the machinery of the unconscious mind at work. Perhaps, then, our dreams are a nightly invitation to be humble explorers of our own inner space. We do not need to believe that every dream has a single, hidden meaning that must be decoded. It is enough to simply sit with the images that rise from our own depths, and to feel a sense of wonder that we are so much deeper, so much older, and so much more mysterious than our waking selves usually allow us to believe. We are connected, through this inner ocean, to both our own hidden past and to a shared, ancient human story. And in this deep, primal ocean of the mind, we are not just idly floating. There is a part of us that is training, practicing, and preparing for the dangers that lurk not only in the abyss, but in the sunlit world above. Why is it that we so often dream of being chased, of falling from a great height, or of finding ourselves completely unprepared for an important exam we may have taken decades ago? Why does the mind, in its supposed time of rest, build these elaborate and often terrifying theatres of fear for us, night after night? These dreams, which we call nightmares or anxiety dreams, feel like a malfunction, a cruel trick of a tired brain. But a fascinating theory from the field of evolutionary psychology suggests that these frightening dreams are not a malfunction at all. In fact, they may be one of the most important and ancient features of the dreaming mind, a kind of primal simulation, a training ground that has been helping our species to survive for hundreds of thousands of years. To understand this, we must first immerse ourselves in the feeling of a classic anxiety dream. There is the sudden, heart-pounding realization of danger. There is the frantic search for an escape route, the desperate pumping of legs that feel like they are moving through thick honey. There is the rising tide of panic, the feeling of being trapped, the certainty of impending doom. The emotional and psychological experience of the fear is absolutely real. But at the same time, your physical body is lying perfectly still, safe in your bed, your breath steady, your muscles relaxed in a state of profound peace. This disconnect is the key. The theory, known as the threat simulation theory, was first proposed by the Finnish philosopher and cognitive scientist Antti Revonsuo. He argued that the dreaming brain evolved to serve a crucial biological function, to simulate threatening events and to rehearse the perceptual and motor skills needed to cope with them. For our ancient ancestors, the world was a place filled with real, mortal dangers. Predators lurked in the darkness, rival tribes could attack without warning, and a simple fall from a tree could be a fatal event. In such an environment, any mental mechanism that allowed an individual to practice their escape and avoidance strategies would have been incredibly valuable. A dream of being chased by a great beast and finding a hiding place in a cave would have better prepared the dreamer to react instinctively in a real-life encounter. A dream of navigating treacherous terrain would have improved their spatial awareness. In essence, the dreaming brain created a kind of primitive virtual reality simulator, allowing our ancestors to run through life or death scenarios every night without any of the real-world risks. The genius of this ancestral simulator lies in its neurobiology. As we have learned, during REM sleep, the brain's fear center, the amygdala, is highly active, which is why the emotions in a nightmare feel so intensely real. However, at the same time, the neurochemicals associated with stress and panic in the waking world, particularly norepinephrine, are at their lowest levels. This creates a remarkable situation. The brain can activate the emotional experience of fear without triggering the full-blown and potentially harmful physiological panic response. It allows us to process the fear, to learn from it in a controlled, safe environment. It is a form of natural exposure therapy that we undergo every single night. The analogy in our modern world would be a pilot training in a flight simulator. The pilot can experience the sheer terror of an engine failure or a crash landing. They can feel their heart pound and their palms sweat, and they can practice the precise sequence of actions needed to save the aircraft. But at the end of the simulation, they can simply open the door and walk away completely unharmed, but better prepared for a real crisis. Our nightmares, in this view, are our own personal flight simulators for the soul. Of course, in our modern world, most of us are not running from saber-toothed tigers, but the ancient machinery of our dreaming brain is still with us, and it has adapted to our new environment. The threats we face today are often not physical, but social and psychological. We fear public speaking, or failing an important interview, or navigating a difficult social conflict. And so, Our dreaming mind creates simulations for these modern threats. The classic dream of being unprepared for an exam is not really about the exam itself. It is a simulation of any situation where we might feel exposed, judged, and found wanting. The dream of our teeth falling out is not about dental hygiene. It is a primal simulation of losing social status, power, or attractiveness. Our anxiety dreams have simply updated their scripts to reflect the pressures of our current lives, but the underlying purpose remains the same: to prepare us, to toughen us, and to help us survive. Perhaps then, our nightmares are not a punishment, but a feature. They are a sign of a brain that is actively trying to protect us, an ancient guardian that is diligently running drills in the quiet of the night. It is a strange, and sometimes frightening, gift from our evolutionary past, a powerful testament to our species' profound and unrelenting drive to endure. But this nightly training is not only about fear, it is also about our other deep emotions, the ones that need softening, understanding, and a gentle place to rest. Remember a time when you went to bed feeling heavy with a particular sadness, or tangled in the tight knots of anger, the feeling sitting like a stone in your chest. And then, after a night of deep and perhaps entirely forgotten dreams, you awoke to find that the stone was gone. The memory of what had upset you was still there, but the sharp, painful, emotional edge had been sanded down, leaving it smoother, more distant, and far easier to hold. This quiet, overnight alchemy, this transformation of our most difficult feelings, is not an accident, nor is it just the simple effect of time. It is one of the most profound and compassionate functions of our dreaming brain, to act as a kind of emotional thermostat, a nightly healer that works to soothe our psychic wounds and restore our emotional balance. Imagine a skilled artisan who works with molten glass. During the heat of the day, an experience can create an emotion that is like a glowing, searingly hot piece of glass, too intense, too volatile, too dangerous to touch directly. To try and shape it in that moment would only lead to burns. And so, the artisan of the mind waits. In the cool, quiet workshop of the night, during REM sleep, they can gently return to that piece of glass. They can carefully place it back in the furnace, not to bring it to that same searing heat, but just to warm it enough to become pliable again. And then, with skillful hands, they can begin to reshape it, to smooth its sharp edges, to transform it from a painful shard into a new, more stable, and perhaps even beautiful form, before letting it cool slowly and permanently into the mosaic of our memory. This beautiful metaphor is remarkably close to what neuroscientists believe is happening in our brains every single night. One of the leading researchers in this field, Dr. Matthew Walker, has described REM sleep as a form of overnight therapy. The process hinges on the unique chemical environment of the dreaming brain that we have already explored. When we have an emotional experience during the day, two things are created: the memory of the event itself and the emotion that is attached to it. During REM sleep, the brain begins to reprocess these recent, emotional memories. The hippocampus and the amygdala are both highly active, replaying the experience. But crucially, as this replay happens, the brain is almost entirely free of a key stress-related neurochemical called norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is a close cousin of adrenaline, and it is a major component of our anxiety and fight-or-flight response. To dream in a brain that is temporarily free from this chemical is to be able to look at difficult memories without the accompanying painful emotional charge. It is a brilliant biological strategy. The brain is able to separate the emotion from the memory. It keeps the valuable lesson, the information from the experience, but it gently diffuses and removes the visceral, painful sting. This is how we can move on from difficult events, and why time, specifically the time we spend in REM sleep, truly does help to heal our wounds. This nightly therapy session is also made possible by a shift in the balance of power within the brain's leadership. In our waking lives, our rational, logical prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain right behind our forehead, acts as the calm and collected executive. It keeps our emotional centers, like the impulsive and reactive amygdala, in check. It is the parent, gently guiding the emotional child. But during REM sleep, the prefrontal cortex becomes much less active. The parent, in a sense, steps back. This allows the amygdala, the emotional child, to be much more expressive and free. But because this is all happening in the safe, norepinephrine-free environment, and because the body is safely paralyzed, the child can play and express itself without any danger. It can re-experience the day's feelings, not in a logical, narrative way, but in a free associative, emotional way, allowing the feelings to be processed on their own terms. It is a space for our emotions to breathe. This process is absolutely vital for our mental health. It is no coincidence that a lack of sufficient REM sleep is a common feature in many mood disorders, such as anxiety and depression. Without this nightly opportunity to reset our emotional thermostat, our feelings can remain too hot, carrying over from one day to the next until our entire system overheats. Dreaming, then, is not an escape from our feelings, but rather a deep and courageous engagement with them. It is our brain's own innate and incredibly wise ritual of emotional housekeeping, a quiet and diligent process that mends our hearts and minds without our ever needing to be consciously aware of the work being done. We are stitched back together in the quiet of the night. We are not just resting, we are being repaired. The strange stories, the bizarre landscapes, and the fleeting characters of our dreams are all part of this therapeutic play, the symbolic language of a mind that is gently, patiently, and compassionately healing itself. We are mended in the dark, and as these emotions are reshaped and these memories are carefully filed away, something extraordinary begins to emerge from all of the scattered fragments. A coherent and continuous story of who we are. Who is the you that experiences your dreams? It is a curious version of yourself, is it not? It is a self that possesses all your memories, your hopes, and your fears. And yet it is a self that often accepts the most impossible circumstances without ever questioning them. A self that can be both the main character in the story and the silent, invisible observer watching it all unfold. Who is this silent dreamer? The journey to answer this question leads us to another of the great purposes of our nightly adventures: the construction, maintenance, and constant revision of our own identity. Our sense of self, our feeling of being a continuous person through time, can feel like a solid and unchanging thing. But perhaps it is more like a work of art, a beautiful mosaic that is being created piece by piece, night after night. During the day, we move through the world and gather the raw materials, the little tiles of experience, a conversation with a friend, the feeling of the wind, a pang of disappointment, a moment of quiet joy. By the time we go to bed, these tiles are just a scattered, disorganized pile. But at night, the artist of the dreaming mind comes out and begins to work. It takes these seemingly unrelated fragments and begins to arrange them, to see what patterns they make, to fit them into the larger picture. The final result is not a perfect photorealistic image, but a unique, abstract, and deeply personal mosaic. And the grout that holds all of these disparate pieces together, the substance that allows them to form a single, coherent image, is the story of you. Neuroscience has begun to identify the artist's studio in the brain. There is a specific network of brain regions that is now famously known as the default mode network, or the DMN. This network is most active when we are not focused on any external task. It switches on when we are daydreaming, when we are recalling memories, when we are thinking about the future, and, most importantly, when we are thinking about ourselves. It is the part of the brain that seems to be responsible for our internal monologue, for the ongoing story of our life. And what researchers have discovered is that this very same default mode network is highly active during REM sleep. This is a profound clue. It suggests that dreaming is not a random blast of meaningless static, but is actually a continuation of the same self-reflective, storytelling processes that we engage in during our quietest waking moments. Our dreams are a form of introspective thought, but they are thinking in the language of images and metaphors instead of words. This process is a kind of autobiographical weaving. Our dreams are constantly taking the threads of our past, the concerns of our present, and the anxieties or hopes for our future, and spinning them together into new narrative tapestries. A dream might combine the memory of your childhood home with the anxiety you have about an upcoming work presentation, and it might cast your best friend in the role of a wise guide. This strange combination is not random. It is your brain's attempt to integrate the new experience, the anxiety about the presentation, into the larger fabric of your life story. It is trying to understand the present by placing it in the context of your past. You can think of your mind as a novelist who is perpetually writing and editing a book called Me. Every night, the novelist takes the events of the previous day's chapter and looks for ways to redraft the story, to see how this new information changes the protagonist's character arc, to explore different possible subplots, and to make the entire narrative more coherent. Furthermore, dreams help us to build and refine our schemas, which are the mental frameworks and belief systems we use to understand the world and our place in it. We have schemas for everything: for what a dog is, for how to behave in a library, and for who we are as a person. Dreams often seem to test the boundaries of these schemas by presenting us with bizarre, rule-breaking scenarios. When you dream that you can fly, it is not just a pleasant fantasy. It is your brain playing with the fundamental schema of what my body is capable of and how the laws of physics work. By creating a simulation that violates these rules, the brain is, in a strange way, stress testing, and thereby strengthening its understanding of the real-world version of those rules. It is asking what if, in the most creative way imaginable, a process that makes our mental models of the world more flexible and more robust. Our sense of self is not a static object we are born with, but a story that we are constantly telling ourselves, a mosaic we are continually building. Dreams are the nightly workshop where that story is edited, embellished, and reinforced. Every single night, our brain works to take the chaotic fragments of our life and weave them into the coherent identity that awakens in the morning. Even the strangest dream is another thread in the beautiful, complex, and entirely unique tapestry of you. This process of storytelling, however, does not always use words. In fact, the language of dreams seems to come from a time far older, a time before alphabets and sentences were ever conceived. Have you ever tried to explain a particularly vivid dream to someone else, only to find that the words crumble as you speak them? You try to describe the strange, twisting logic of the story, the immense weight of the feelings it produced, but the telling of it feels like a pale, flimsy translation of the original experience. It is like trying to describe the color red to someone who has only ever seen in shades of grey. The words can point to the idea, but they can never truly capture the essence of the thing itself. This struggle is not a failure of our vocabulary, but a profound clue to the very nature of dreams. It tells us that our dreams do not speak to us in the modern, grammatical language of our waking minds. Instead, they communicate in a much older, more primal, and more powerful tongue, the language of pure image, of symbol, and of raw emotion. It is a language that was born long before the first word was ever spoken. To understand it, we must imagine ourselves journeying deep into the earth, into one of the great, ancient caves of humanity, like those at Lascaux in France or Chauvet farther south. The air is cool and still, and the only light is the soft, flickering flame of a torch you hold in your hand. And as you raise the torch, the dancing light reveals magnificent paintings on the limestone walls. You see great, powerful animals, bison, horses, lions, drawn with a breathtaking and vital energy. You see the stenciled outlines of human hands, reaching out from the rock, a signature from a soul who lived 30,000 years ago. You see strange, abstract symbols, dots and lines whose meaning is lost to time, but whose intention you can still feel. You cannot know the exact story these images were meant to tell, but you do not need to. You can feel their power, their symbolic weight, their deep connection to the mysteries of life and death. This is the language of dreams. The reason our dreams are so intensely visual, so much more like a film than a novel, has its roots in the unique wiring of our sleeping brain. During REM sleep, the part of our brain that receives direct, raw data from our eyes, the primary visual cortex is relatively quiet, as it should be, since our eyes are closed. However, the parts of the brain right next to it, the higher-level visual association areas, are blazing with activity. These are the regions that are connected to our memory, to our emotions, and to our vast store of knowledge about what things look like. In essence, the brain is seeing things that are being generated from its own internal library of images, not from the outside world. The dreaming brain is an artist with a photographic memory and an infinite canvas, painting pictures with the pigments of everything it has ever seen. This visual language is then combined with a profoundly metaphorical way of thinking. As we have learned, the logical, rational prefrontal cortex is taking a rest during REM sleep. This allows the brain to make connections between ideas not based on linear logic, but on emotional or symbolic similarity. It thinks like a poet, not like an engineer. This is the source of dream symbolism. A dream is rarely about what it literally appears to be about. Instead, it is your brain's attempt to represent an abstract emotional concept as a concrete visual image. If you are feeling overwhelmed and crushed by the pressure of your job, you are unlikely to dream about sitting at your desk feeling stressed. Instead, you might dream that you are being pursued by a giant, roaring monster, or that you are trapped in a room where the walls are slowly closing in. Your brain has taken the abstract feeling of pressure and translated it into a powerful, physical, visual metaphor. It is communicating the feeling to you in the most direct way it knows how. This is the foundational language of all art, of all poetry, and of all myth. Some theorists have even proposed that this dreamlike mode of thought, this proto-consciousness, might be a living relic of how the human mind worked before the development of complex, grammatical language. Before we had words for love, fear, or community, we had powerful shared images and rituals that conveyed these concepts. In a way, to dream is to return to this more ancient and fundamental way of making meaning each night. It is as if our brain, with its modern, sophisticated, language-based operating system, reboots every night into a kind of safe mode, which is the original, image-based operating system of human consciousness. To dream, then, is to become a poet, a painter, a myth-maker. It is to speak the ancient mother tongue of the human spirit, a language that is understood not by the logical mind, but by the feeling heart. Our dreams are a private, personal art gallery that we are gifted with each night, filled with masterpieces created by and for us alone. And we are the only ones who can truly feel the meaning behind the beautiful, strange, and sometimes frightening art that hangs on the silent walls of our own minds. And this flood of images, this ancient language of the mind, is not just a random broadcast. It is a stream of information, and like all information, it might be governed by principles as fundamental as the light that fills our universe. Imagine that your mind is a magnificent, sprawling library, the greatest library in the world, and every single day, thousands of new items are delivered to its doors. There are not just new books, but also newspapers, magazines, handwritten notes, photographs, scraps of conversation, and endless streams of trivial junk mail. If the librarian simply accepted everything and left it in a pile, the library would soon be buried in a mountain of disorganized clutter, and finding any single piece of useful information would become impossible. To function, a library requires a powerful system for sorting the important from the trivial, for filing things in a way that makes sense, and for clearing out the irrelevant noise. Our dreaming mind, some scientists believe, is this library's astonishingly elegant, silent, night shift crew. It is the master organizer, ensuring that the signal of our life's experiences does not get lost in the noise. To visualize this, think of the light of your waking life as a single, powerful, and somewhat chaotic beam of pure white light. It is a constant, overwhelming flood of sensory data, a mixture of every color and every frequency at once. When this beam of light enters the prism of sleep, something magical happens. The prism takes that chaotic, undifferentiated white light and gently breaks it down into its constituent parts, spreading it out into a beautiful, orderly rainbow. We experience this nightly spectrum as the strange, vibrant, and meaningful hues of our dreams. This idea draws from a field of science known as information theory, which was originally developed to understand the transmission of signals through mediums like radio waves or telephone lines. One of its core concepts is the distinction between a signal, the meaningful part of a message, and noise, the random, irrelevant static that gets in the way. A key theory of dreaming proposes that the dreaming brain is engaged in a nightly process of denoising. It is sifting through the chaotic jumble of the day's neural activity, looking for the meaningful signals, the important emotional events, the key social interactions, the novel lessons learned, and attempting to separate them from all the random, unimportant noise that was also recorded. The bizarre narratives of our dreams, in this view, are the brain's creative attempt to weave a story using only the leftover signal pieces. It is finding the vital message and discarding the static. This process is also a form of highly efficient data compression. In the world of computers, we compress large files into a smaller format, like a zip file, to save space. A compression algorithm works by finding patterns and redundancies in the data and creating a kind of shorthand to represent them more efficiently. Our dreams may be performing a similar function for our memories. Instead of storing every single mundane detail of an experience, the dreaming brain extracts the gist of it, the emotional core, the key takeaways, the overall pattern, and integrates that essential summary into our long-term memory, while allowing the redundant, specific details to fade away. A dream is like the abstract summary on the back of a very long book. It does not contain all the specific sentences, but it perfectly captures the main characters, the central conflict, and the emotional theme of the story. This is why you can have a dream that seems to encapsulate years of your life into a single, fleeting scene, or that represents a complex emotional problem as a single, powerful image. It is the mind's own natural genius for abstraction and compression. This leads us to one of the most beautiful ideas in modern neuroscience: the concept of the brain as a prediction machine. This theory, often called the Bayesian brain, suggests that our brain's primary job is not to passively react to the world, but to actively predict what is going to happen next, based on a constantly updated internal model of reality. And what is the best way to improve a predictive model? You have to test it, especially with strange, unexpected, and novel data. This, some scientists believe, is exactly what dreams are for. Dreams are a space where the brain can run wild simulations, creating novel scenarios and bizarre, unexpected juxtapositions that would never happen in real life. By doing this, it is stress testing its own assumptions about the world. It is a safe, offline environment where the brain can play with its own predictive models, find their weaknesses, and refine them, making them more accurate and more robust for the waking world. It is the brain asking "what if?" in the most creative and profound way possible, all to be better prepared for the reality of what is. Perhaps, then, dreams are the ultimate expression of an organized and efficient mind. They are not a descent into chaos, but a supremely elegant method of cleaning, compressing, and understanding the torrent of information we call life. It is the universe's fundamental tendency toward elegance and order, playing out in the quiet, 3-pound universe nestled inside our own head. This intricate process of managing information, of weaving light into meaning, does not happen in a vacuum. It is deeply and intimately connected to the very rhythms of the planet we call home, the gentle turning of the earth that pulls us into and out of the darkness each and every day. Feel the gentle pull of evening, the subtle shift in the light, and the air as the world softens into dusk. Feel the way your own body responds, a quiet, internal tide turning towards rest. Have you ever wondered if this pull is not just a habit, not just a response to a busy day, but a deep and ancient rhythm that we are born to follow? A rhythm that connects the quiet mechanics of our own cells to the grand and silent turning of the earth itself. Our journey into the world of dreams has so far taken us deep inside the mind, through its chemistry and its architecture. But now, we must pull back, far out into the silent darkness of space, to see our planet as a whole. From this vantage point, you can see the Earth turning, a slow and graceful pirouette on the grand stage of the cosmos. The most beautiful feature of this dance is the terminator, the soft, blurry line that separates the sunlit hemisphere from the hemisphere of night. You can watch this line of twilight sweep silently and continuously across the oceans and the continents. As it passes, you can imagine the world below responding. In the fields of Europe, sunflowers that have tracked the sun all day slowly bow their heads. In the jungles of the Amazon, the nocturnal chorus of tree frogs and insects begins to swell. This is the great, silent, planetary breath of the circadian rhythm, the most fundamental pulse of life on Earth. Deep within our brains, nestled in the hypothalamus, is a tiny but profoundly powerful cluster of about 20,000 neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN. This is our body's master clock, the conductor of our own personal circadian orchestra, and this conductor has a direct line to the outside world, the optic nerves that run from our eyes. The SCN is not involved in seeing, but it is exquisitely sensitive to the presence and absence of light. Light is the conductor's baton. As the light of day streams into our eyes, the SCN sends out signals that keep our entire body in its daytime, wakeful state. And as the light fades in the evening, the SCN registers this change and begins to conduct the great, slow symphony of the night. This single, tiny structure synchronizes a vast orchestra of smaller clocks that exist in virtually every organ and every cell of our body, from our liver to our muscles to our skin, ensuring that trillions of individual musicians are all playing in perfect time with the turning of the planet. The most tangible way we feel this conductor's command is through the rising and falling of a hormonal tide. As dusk falls and the light entering our eyes diminishes, the SCN sends a signal to another small structure in the brain, the pineal gland. In response, the pineal gland begins to release a hormone called melatonin into our bloodstream. Melatonin is often called the hormone of darkness, and its job is to gently encourage the brain and body to prepare for sleep. It is not a powerful sedative that knocks you out, but rather a soft, persuasive whisper that says, "The night has come, it is time to rest." It is the gentle chemical tide that begins to carry our boat of consciousness away from the bright, busy shores of the waking world. Then, hours later, as the earth continues its slow turn and the first faint light of dawn approaches, the SCN will conduct the opposite movement. It will signal our adrenal glands to begin releasing cortisol, a hormone that promotes alertness and wakefulness. This is the tide turning, the gentle but insistent current that will carry our boat back to the shore of the morning. Within this grand, 24-hour rhythm of the Earth's rotation, our brain plays out its own smaller, repeating symphonies throughout the night. Our sleep is not a single, monolithic state. Instead, it is a journey through a repeating cycle of different stages, from light sleep down into deep, restorative slow-wave sleep, and then up into the vivid, active world of REM sleep. Each full cycle lasts for about 90 to 110 minutes, and we typically experience 4 or 5 of these cycles each night. Dreaming, then, is not a place we go and stay, but a predictable and recurring port that we visit on this cyclical, internal voyage. The great circadian river carries us through the night, and along its course there are these sheltered coves of REM sleep, where the mind is allowed to anchor for a while and tell its strange, beautiful stories. Our desire for sleep, our need to dream, is therefore not a personal failing or a sign of weakness. It is a profound testament to our unbreakable connection to this planet. We are beings of rhythm, our very biology tuned to the turning of our world and the light of our star. To sleep and to dream is to answer a call that is billions of years old. It is to place ourselves back into the deep and comforting harmony of the universe. And as this great river carries us into the depths of the night, our minds arrive at a quiet, secluded workshop where the scattered materials of our day are about to be transformed into something new and entirely unexpected. Have you ever heard the common piece of advice to sleep on it? When we are faced with a difficult, stubborn problem that seems to have no solution, we are often told to put it away, to get a good night's rest, and to look at it again in the morning. What if that is not just a folksy saying to encourage a break, but a description of a real and powerful cognitive process that happens every night within the quiet theatre of our minds? What if sleep, and specifically the dream state, is a secret hidden studio where our brain becomes its most creative and insightful self? Imagine a quiet, cluttered artist's studio, lit only by the soft, silvery light of the moon. All day long, the artist worked under the harsh, direct light of the sun, trying to force pieces of a puzzle together, but nothing would fit. Frustrated, the artist has gone home to rest. But now, in the gentle, diffuse light of the night, an unseen, creative force begins to move through the studio. It is not constrained by the artist's rigid, daytime logic. It picks up a shape from here, a color from there, a texture from across the room, and it begins to playfully combine them in new and unexpected ways. It is making connections that were completely invisible in the bright, analytical light of day. This quiet, nocturnal visitor is your dreaming brain at work. The creative genius of the dreaming brain comes from its unique state of chemical and electrical anarchy. As we have learned, during REM sleep, the logical, rigidly organized, and critical part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, is taking a well-deserved rest. This allows the rest of the brain to enter a state of what scientists call hyper-associativity. Instead of thinking in straight, linear paths, the dreaming mind thinks in expanding, interconnected webs. It is able to make broad, creative, and sometimes bizarre leaps between different memories, ideas, and concepts that our waking mind would have dismissed as being unrelated. Imagine a librarian who, for their entire day shift, has been meticulously shelving books according to the strict, logical Dewey Decimal System. But on the night shift, a different kind of librarian comes on duty. This librarian ignores the decimal system entirely and starts shelving books based on the color of their covers, or on the feeling they evoke, or on a single word that appears in the first and last chapters. This new, chaotic system would create the most surprising and wonderful juxtapositions, placing a book of poetry next to a manual on starship engineering, simply because they both have a blue cover. This is how the dreaming brain thinks, and it is in these surprising juxtapositions that the seeds of creative insight are often found. History is filled with wonderful, and perhaps even legendary, stories of this process in action. One of the most famous is that of the 19th century chemist Auguste Kekule. He had been struggling for years to understand the molecular structure of benzene, a crucial chemical compound. All the evidence suggested it was a chain of 6 carbon atoms, but he could not figure out how they were bonded. Exhausted, he fell asleep in his chair by the fire and had a dream. In the dream, he saw atoms dancing and whirling before his eyes, forming long, snake-like chains. Then, suddenly, one of the snakes turned and seized its own tail in its mouth, forming a spinning ring. Kekule awoke with a start, the solution illuminated in his mind. The benzene molecule was not a chain, but a closed ring. Another famous tale comes from the inventor Elias Howe, who was struggling to design a functional sewing machine. His problem was the placement of the eye of the needle. In a nightmare, he dreamed he was captured by a tribe of warriors who were dancing around him, threatening him with their spears. He noticed, in his terror, that each spear had a hole carved into its tip. When he woke up, he realized that this was the answer. Instead of placing the eye at the base of the needle, like in a hand-sewing needle, he had to place it at the point. This breakthrough made the lock-stitch sewing machine possible. These stories hint at a process that we can all gently encourage in our own lives, a technique known as dream incubation. This is the simple, conscious act of focusing on a specific problem or question just before you fall asleep. You can write it down, or meditate on it, or simply hold it gently in your mind as you drift off. This process does not guarantee a magical solution will arrive in a dream, but it does act as a gentle suggestion to the nocturnal librarian of your mind. It primes the hyperassociative state of REM sleep to play with the relevant concepts and memories related to your problem. It is like leaving a specific pile of books out on the main table of the library, with a quiet note for the night shift worker, asking them to see if they can find any interesting connections. Our dreams, then, are not just a replay of our past. They are a creative exploration of our possible futures. They are a safe and boundless playground for our ideas, a secret, moonlit studio where our deepest and most playful intelligence works to solve the puzzles of our lives, offering us its solutions not in the form of neat equations or logical proofs, but in the strange and beautiful language of stories and symbols. The materials used in this studio are not just ideas, but the very fabric of sensation itself, drawn from a palette that can paint the taste of a color or the sound of a feeling. In a dream, you can feel the comforting warmth of the sun on your skin, even in the dead of winter. You can run your hand along the rough, cool texture of a stone wall, or feel the impossibly soft fur of an animal that does not exist. You can experience the terrifying, stomach-lurching sensation of falling through an endless sky. How can these feelings be so completely, convincingly real when your physical body is lying perfectly still and untouched in the quiet darkness of your room? This nightly miracle of sensation, this ability of the mind to create a world that is as tangible as the one we inhabit by day, reveals that the brain is not just a storyteller, but a master illusionist, a grand conductor of a symphony of the senses. Imagine a vast concert hall, moments before a performance begins. The audience is settled, and the musicians of a grand orchestra are on stage, each with their instrument. But the conductor has not yet arrived, and in the quiet anticipation, a strange and beautiful chaos begins. The violin section, on its own, starts to play a melody that does not sound like music, but instead feels like the color blue. The deep, resonant notes of the cellos do not create a sound, but the scent of damp earth. The brass instruments play a chord that tastes of honey and salt. This is the synesthetic, unbound, and creatively chaotic sensory world of the dreaming brain. An orchestra playing a symphony of reality without a conductor to keep it tethered to the outside world. The reason these phantom sensations feel so authentic is that the dreaming brain is a masterful mimic of its waking self. It activates the very same regions that it uses to process real sensory information during the day. When you dream of looking at the face of a loved one, a specific part of your brain called the fusiform face area, which is specialized for facial recognition, lights up with activity, just as it would if you were really looking at them. When you dream of running or dancing or flying, your motor cortex, the part of your brain that plans and executes movements, fires in the same patterns as it would if you were actually moving. The dream is, in a very real sense, a full dress rehearsal of reality. The brain has assembled all the same actors, all the specialized sensory and motor regions, and has them performing on the magnificent stage of your mind. The only difference is that the performance is entirely internal. The gates to the outside world are closed, and the play is being performed for an audience of one. The common and often unsettling dream of falling is a powerful example of this internal simulation. While we are lying still in bed, our vestibular system, the intricate network of canals in our inner ear that is responsible for our sense of balance and spatial orientation, can sometimes become spontaneously active. This can send a confusing and disorienting signal to the brain, a signal that says, we are in motion, we are off balance. The brain, ever the storyteller, takes this abstract signal and instantly weaves it into a narrative, and the most logical story to explain a sudden loss of balance is the story of falling. The feeling of touch in a dream is generated by the somatosensory cortex, the strip of brain tissue that maps out our entire body, creating a phantom feeling on our phantom dream skin. The entire sensory world of the dream is a masterful reconstruction, built from the inside out. In this state of creative freedom, with the logical conductor of the prefrontal cortex off duty, the different sections of the brain's orchestra are free to communicate in ways they normally would not. This can lead to a beautiful phenomenon known as synesthesia, the blending of different senses. In waking life, for a very small number of people, this is a permanent state of being, where they might genuinely see colors when they hear music or taste shapes. But in the dream world, this experience can become much more common. The hyperassociative state of the brain means that the neural pathways for different senses can temporarily cross, bleeding into one another. The result is a world where the normal rules of sensation no longer apply, a place where you can truly taste a word, or see a sound, or feel an emotion as a physical color. It is the brain exploring the full, unbridled potential of its own sensory palette. Every night, we carry within us a universe-building machine of unimaginable power and fidelity. It can construct worlds from the fabric of our memories that are as sensorially convincing, and sometimes even more so, than the physical world we inhabit by day. This spectacular ability is not a fantasy or a trick. It is a fundamental feature of our own intricate neurology, a breathtaking symphony played just for us in the silent theatre of the mind. And what if it were possible to become aware during this symphony? Not just to listen to the music, but to gently pick up the conductor's baton and help to lead it yourself. Have you ever had that sudden, breathtaking, and utterly magical moment in the middle of a bizarre dream, where a spark of awareness ignites and a quiet thought arises in your mind? This is a dream. In that instant, the world around you, which was just a moment before a completely immersive and unquestioned reality, suddenly shifts. It is as if a veil has been lifted. The colors might seem to snap into a higher definition, the details become sharper, and a profound feeling of exhilaration, freedom, and boundless possibility washes over you. This experience, known as lucid dreaming, is one of the most fascinating frontiers in the exploration of consciousness. It is the moment when the dreamer awakens, not to the outside world, but to the dream itself. It is the transformation from being a passive passenger on a strange and unpredictable ship to being the sailor who is suddenly handed the helm and told that they can now steer towards any horizon they can possibly imagine. For a long time, lucid dreaming was considered a rare anomaly, a myth, or a purely subjective experience that could not be studied. But with the advent of modern brain imaging, scientists have been able to open a window into this remarkable state. The key discovery came when lucid dreamers were able to signal to researchers that they had become aware within their dream, usually by using a prearranged sequence of eye movements, which they could control even while the rest of their body was in the state of REM paralysis. When researchers observed the dreamers' brains at the exact moment they signaled lucidity, they saw a distinct and sudden burst of activity in a part of the brain that is normally quiet during REM sleep, the prefrontal cortex. Specifically, regions like the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which are associated with our highest cognitive functions like self-awareness, working memory, and executive control, suddenly spring to life. This reveals that a lucid dream is a remarkable hybrid state of consciousness. It combines the vivid, hallucinatory, and immersive world-building of REM sleep with a flicker of the self-aware, reflective consciousness of the waking mind. It is to be both the dreamer and the one who knows they are dreaming, simultaneously. This extraordinary state of mind is not just a random accident. For many, it is a skill that can be cultivated with gentle and patient practice. One of the most common techniques for encouraging lucidity is known as reality testing. This involves getting into the habit, during your waking day, of frequently and mindfully pausing to ask yourself the question, "Am I dreaming right now?" You then perform a simple test that would have a different result in a dream than in reality. You might try to push your finger through the palm of your opposite hand, or look at a piece of text, look away, and then look back to see if it has changed. The idea is that if you make this a deep and consistent habit during the day, you will eventually, sooner or later, perform the action out of habit while you are dreaming. And in that moment, when your finger passes effortlessly through your palm, or when the text on the page morphs into gibberish, that spark of lucidity will ignite. Another gentle technique is called the mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, or the MILD technique. This involves setting a clear and gentle intention as you are falling asleep. You repeat to yourself a simple phrase, such as, "Tonight, I will remember that I am dreaming," helping to plant a seed of awareness that can then blossom within the dream state itself. But why would one want to cultivate this skill? For some, the answer is the sheer joy and freedom of exploration, the ability to fly over magnificent landscapes of your own creation, or to conjure and converse with characters from the depths of your own mind. But lucid dreaming also holds a profound therapeutic potential. For those who suffer from recurrent nightmares, becoming lucid can be a powerfully transformative tool. It allows them to face the frightening figures in their dreams, to question them, to understand them, and ultimately, to rob them of their power. The monster that was chasing you can be confronted, and you can ask it, "What do you represent? And what do you want from me?" It is a way to transform the threat simulation stage into a space for conscious integration and healing. It can also be a personal laboratory for practicing skills, from public speaking to athletic movements, in a perfectly safe and responsive virtual environment. Lucid dreaming, then, reminds us that the boundary between our conscious and unconscious selves is not a solid wall, but a permeable, shimmering veil. It suggests that with gentle practice and quiet intention, we can become more conscious participants in the great stories our minds tell each night, evolving from simply being the dreamer to becoming the dream's gentle and curious co-creator. This remarkable ability to dream, to create entire worlds within our minds, is not a uniquely human experience. If we could listen closely to the quiet breathing of the creatures around us, we might hear the echoes of their own secret, nightly journeys. Take a quiet moment to watch a dog as it sleeps. You will see its chest rise and fall in a slow, steady rhythm. But then, as it drifts deeper into its own world, you might see its paws begin to twitch, its legs making the soft, paddling motions of a run. You might see its whiskers and its nose begin to flicker, and from its throat, you might hear the tiniest, muffled yelps and whimpers. Where has its mind gone? Is it chasing an imaginary squirrel through a sunlit field that exists only in its memory? Is it dreaming of the scent of a long-forgotten trail, or the comforting presence of its human companion? This quiet, domestic mystery, which plays out on our carpets and sofas every single day, opens a door to a profoundly beautiful idea, that the incredible, world-building capacity of the dreaming mind is not a uniquely human gift, but a chorus that is sung each night by countless species across our planet. If we could only listen, we would find that the world is filled with dreamers. Let your imagination wander for a moment into the silent, inner lives of the animal kingdom at rest. Picture a cat, curled in a perfect circle in a warm patch of sunlight, its ears and whiskers twitching in response to some unheard sound in its dream. Journey to the deep ocean, where a pod of dolphins sleeps while swimming, resting one half of their brain at a time while the other half remains alert, a testament to the inescapable biological need for this state of rest. And in a quiet aquarium, watch a sleeping octopus, a creature of profound and alien intelligence. As it sleeps, its skin, which is covered in pigment sacs called chromatophores, flashes and ripples through a breathtaking kaleidoscope of colors and patterns, a silent, external broadcast of what might be the dramatic, shifting landscapes of its own deep-sea dreams. For a long time, the question of whether animals dream was a matter of pure speculation and sentimental projection. But decades of careful scientific observation have revealed that the fundamental building blocks of dreaming are astonishingly widespread throughout the animal kingdom. REM sleep, the stage where most vivid, narrative dreaming occurs in humans, has been identified in a vast range of species. Scientists have found it in all mammals that have been studied, from great apes to tiny mice. They have found it in birds, whose brains are so different from our own, and even in some reptiles, and, as the color-changing octopus suggests, possibly in some invertebrates. When these creatures enter REM sleep, they display the same key physiological signs that we do. Their eyes dart back and forth beneath their closed lids. Their bodies enter a state of muscle paralysis, and their brains produce the same fast, chaotic, wake-like brainwaves. The presence of this complex and specific state across so many divergent evolutionary branches suggests that it is not a recent invention, but a very ancient and vitally important part of what it means to have a complex brain. But the evidence goes even deeper than these physiological similarities. A landmark study gave us a stunning glimpse into the actual content of an animal's dream. Scientists at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology monitored the firing patterns of individual neurons, called place cells, in the hippocampi of rats as they learned to run a complex maze for a food reward. These place cells create a unique neural signature that corresponds to the rat's specific location within the maze. Later, as the rats slept, the researchers continued to monitor their brains. And what they found was breathtaking. During REM sleep, the rats' brains began to replay the exact same sequence of neural firings that had occurred when they were running the maze. The pattern was so precise that the scientists could tell, just by looking at the brain activity, exactly where the rat was in its dream maze, and whether it was running or standing still. And just like in humans, this replay was happening at a much faster, compressed speed. The rats were, for all intents and purposes, dreaming of the maze, likely consolidating their memory of the route to the reward, just as a human student might dream of the material they were studying for an exam. While we can never truly know the subjective, qualitative experience of another being, it is a reasonable and deeply empathetic leap to imagine that animals dream about the things that are most important to their own lives, woven from the fabric of their own unique sensory worlds. A dog, whose primary sense is smell, likely dreams in a rich tapestry of scents that we can hardly imagine. A bird must surely dream of the feeling of the wind beneath its wings, of soaring on thermal updrafts. A dolphin may dream in the language of sonar, clicks and whistles, navigating a three-dimensional world of sound. The existence of dreaming across the animal kingdom is a profound and humbling reminder that we are not separate from the natural world, but are an intrinsic and inseparable part of it. The need to remember, to process, to simulate, and to rehearse is a fundamental drive of conscious life itself. Every night, as our planet turns away from the sun, a great and silent chorus begins. It is the chorus of millions of minds, of all shapes and sizes, quietly slipping into their own private theatres to make sense of their day. And this chorus of consciousness, whether human or animal, points to one of the deepest and most beautiful questions of all. What is this strange phenomenon of awareness itself, and how is it woven from the very same laws that govern the stars? We have journeyed through the biology and chemistry of the sleeping brain. We have spoken of it as a biological machine, a magnificent collection of cells, chemicals, and electrical signals that work in concert to produce the nightly theatre of our dreams. But now, we must ask the deepest question, the one that whispers from the very heart of the mystery. Where in that intricate machine does the feeling of being you actually live? Where in the firing of a neuron, or the exchange of a neurotransmitter, does the experience of seeing the colour red, or feeling the ache of sadness, or tasting the sweetness of a piece of fruit, actually come from? This is the great, unsolved puzzle of consciousness, and our dreams, in all their vivid and hallucinatory splendour, offer us one of the most powerful lenses through which to gaze at it. Perhaps the best way to think about consciousness is not as a single thing, but as a substance that can exist in different states, much like water. Our normal, waking consciousness is like liquid water. It is fluid, it is adaptive, it flows in a mostly linear direction through time, and it is directly connected to, and shaped by, the world around it. Deep, dreamless sleep, then, is like ice. It is a state of consciousness that is rigid, structured, highly organized in its slow brainwaves, and has very little internal activity or subjective experience. It is consciousness in a solid, crystalline form, and dreaming consciousness. That is like steam, or vapor. It is a state where consciousness has become diffuse, chaotic, and unbound by the normal laws of physics or logic. It expands to fill whatever strange container the dream narrative creates, and it is a state of almost pure, internally generated experience. They are all made of the same fundamental substance, the activity of our brain, but they exist in profoundly different and equally valid states of being. This leads us to what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems, though they are still incredibly complex, are the ones that science is steadily solving. Understanding how the brain processes information, how it controls our behavior, how it focuses attention, and how it stores memories. The hard problem is the question of why any of this information processing should be accompanied by a subjective, qualitative experience. Why does the brain's processing of a certain wavelength of light feel like anything at all? Why should it produce the private, ineffable experience that we call seeing the colour red? This subjective quality of experience is what philosophers call qualia, and dreams are, in a sense, a world made of pure qualia. In a dream, you can experience the profound terror of a nightmare, or the ecstatic joy of a flying dream, all created by the brain for itself, completely divorced from any external reality. Dreaming is a powerful reminder that our brains are not just processors of information, but are first and foremost generators of experience. One of the most elegant and thought-provoking scientific theories that attempts to address this hard problem is called Integrated Information Theory, or IIT. In very simple terms, this theory proposes that consciousness is not a mysterious, spiritual property, but a fundamental and measurable property of any system, just like mass or charge. It proposes that the amount of consciousness a system has, which it calls by the Greek letter phi, is a measure of its integrated information. A system is conscious to the degree that it is both highly differentiated, meaning it can exist in a vast number of different possible states, and highly integrated, meaning all of its different parts are interconnected and can influence each other. A simple rock would have a phi value of nearly 0. A modern computer, which is highly differentiated but not very integrated, would also have a very low value. But the human brain, with its billions of neurons, each capable of connecting with thousands of others, is both incredibly differentiated and exquisitely integrated. According to this theory, the dreaming brain, with its chaotic, complex, and highly interconnected patterns of activity, would possess a very high degree of consciousness, not a lesser form of consciousness than our waking state, but a different and equally complex kind. Perhaps the most intuitive way to grasp this is through the idea of emergence. An emergent property is a property that a complex system has, but which its individual components do not have. For example, a single molecule of H2O is not wet. Wetness is an emergent property that arises only when you have a vast collection of those molecules interacting with each other. A single ant is not intelligent, but an ant colony can exhibit incredibly complex intelligent behavior. Similarly, a single neuron is not conscious. It is a simple biological switch. Consciousness may be the emergent property that arises from the complex, recursive, and unimaginably vast interactions of our 86 billion neurons. It is the symphony that emerges from the playing of all the individual instruments, and dreaming is one of the strangest and most beautiful symphonies that this orchestra can play. Perhaps, then, consciousness is not something the brain has, but something the brain does. And dreaming is not an absence of consciousness, but a profound exploration of its very nature, a nightly journey that reminds us that the greatest mystery of the cosmos is not just out there in the distant stars, but is also right here, within the silent, electrical storms of our own minds. But this beautifully complex system, this emergent symphony, is a delicate one. And sometimes, a string may snap, or the rhythm may falter, leading to experiences where the boundary between the sleeping and waking worlds becomes unnervingly thin. Have you ever woken up in the dead of night, your eyes open and aware of your surroundings, but your body is completely terrifyingly frozen, as if held down by an immense and invisible weight? And in that state of helpless paralysis, you may have sensed a dark, malevolent presence in the room with you, a feeling of pure dread that is unlike any other. This experience, known as sleep paralysis, has haunted humanity for centuries, inspiring folklore of demons, witches, and shadowy figures who visit us in the night. But the true explanation is far less supernatural and far more wondrous. It is not an invasion from some outside world, but a rare and momentary glimpse behind the curtain of the mind's own silent theatre. A brief moment when the intricate machinery of our sleep falls just slightly out of sync. To understand it is to replace an ancient terror with a modern sense of awe. Imagine yourself in that state, but this time with a gentle curiosity instead of fear. Your mind is awake. You can see the familiar shapes of your bedroom furniture, cast in the soft moonlight. You are in the waking world, but your body has not yet received the message. It is still peacefully asleep, resting in the safe, protective paralysis of REM sleep that we have spoken of. You are, for a few brief seconds or minutes, caught between two worlds, a conscious mind temporarily inhabiting a dreaming body. This strange and unsettling experience is, at its heart, a simple timing error, a desynchronization of the brain's complex on and off switches. As you come to the end of a REM sleep cycle, your brain normally sends out two signals at almost the exact same time. One signal from the higher brain centers to switch your conscious awareness back on, and another signal from the brainstem to release the muscle atonia and allow your body to move again. In sleep paralysis, the first switch flips on schedule, but the second one is momentarily delayed. Your mind wakes up, but your body is still under the command of the do not move signal from the pons, and the terrifying feeling of a presence in the room. That is likely the brilliant but confused storytelling of your own brain. Your parietal lobes are sending a signal of your body's position in space, but your motor cortex cannot get a response from your limbs. This conflict, this paradox of being aware but unable to move, creates a sense of profound disorientation, and your brain, in its desperate attempt to make sense of the situation, projects your own fear and confusion outward, creating the illusion of an external, menacing figure. It is a ghost created by your own neurology. Another unsettling experience that is often misunderstood is the difference between a nightmare and a night terror. A nightmare, as we have learned, is simply a frightening dream that occurs during REM sleep. It has a narrative, however bizarre, and we often remember it upon waking. A night terror, on the other hand, is a much different and more dramatic event. It occurs not during REM sleep, but is instead an abrupt, partial awakening from the very deepest stage of non-REM, slow-wave sleep. A person experiencing a night terror might suddenly sit bolt upright in bed, eyes wide open, and let out a blood-curdling scream. Their heart may be racing, and they may appear to be in a state of absolute panic. But they are not truly awake, nor are they responding to a narrative dream. They are caught in a strange limbo between deep sleep and wakefulness, and in almost all cases, they will have absolutely no memory of the event in the morning. For a parent or a partner, witnessing a night terror can be deeply distressing, but it is comforting to know that the person experiencing it is not, in fact, suffering through a horrible dream, but is simply in the midst of a powerful but forgettable neurological storm. By understanding how these sleep disorders represent a rare glitch in the brain's intricate architecture, we can develop a much deeper and more profound appreciation for the incredible elegance of the system when it works perfectly, which it does for almost all of us, almost every single night. The perfect synchronization of our sleep-wake switches, the precise chemical ballet of our neurotransmitters, the reliable command that keeps our bodies still while our minds roam free. This is a biological marvel of unimaginable complexity. The rare moments when the timing is slightly off are not a sign of a broken system, but a humbling reminder of the exquisite and delicate dance that allows us to journey safely through the night. These unsettling experiences, then, are not invasions from an outside force, but are simply echoes of the brain's own intricate and powerful machinery. They are a rare peek backstage, a chance to see the ropes and pulleys that are normally hidden from view. Understanding them can allow us to replace a primal fear with a quiet sense of wonder at the beautiful, complicated, and sometimes imperfect symphony of our own biology. And as we learn more and more about this incredible machinery, humanity is beginning to wonder if we can not only understand it, but perhaps even gently guide it, shaping the future of our nightly journeys in ways we are only just beginning to imagine. Imagine, for a moment, being able to choose the theme of your dream tonight, just as you might select a film to watch or a book to read before bed. Or what if a gentle, almost inaudible sound, played while you slept, could help you to consolidate the memory of a new skill you are trying to learn, or even to soften the emotional edges of a painful memory? This may sound like science fiction, but we are standing at the threshold of a new era in our ancient relationship with our dreams. As we learn more about the intricate machinery of the sleeping brain, we are beginning to develop gentle, non-invasive ways to communicate with it, to nudge it, and to potentially help it perform its vital nightly work even more effectively. This is the emerging world of dream engineering. Let us paint a soft, speculative picture of what this might feel like in the not-too-distant future. Imagine you are wearing a soft, comfortable headband to bed. It is not intrusive or heavy, but is woven with tiny, delicate sensors that can monitor the electrical rhythms of your brain. As you drift into REM sleep, the headband's gentle algorithm recognizes the neural signature that often precedes the onset of a stress dream. And just at that moment, it plays a very quiet, soothing tone through a tiny speaker, a sound that you have previously associated with feelings of peace and safety. You do not wake up, but the sound is just perceptible enough to enter your dream, gently nudging the emotional content of the narrative away from fear and towards a more peaceful resolution, all without your conscious awareness. This may still be on the horizon, but the basic science that underlies it is already here. A remarkable field of study called targeted memory reactivation, or TMR, has shown that we can, in fact, influence the brain's memory consolidation process during sleep. In a typical study, a person might learn to associate a specific neutral sound with a piece of information they are trying to memorize, for example, the position of objects on a screen. Then, while the person is in deep, slow wave sleep, the researchers will quietly play that same sound back to them. The results are consistent and remarkable. The memory for the information associated with that sound cue is significantly stronger the next day. The brain, hearing the cue, seems to prioritize the consolidation of the linked memory. This same principle has been shown to work with scents as well, and it opens up a future where sleep could become a gentle and effortless part of any learning process. Building on these foundations, we are seeing the emergence of a new generation of technologies that aim to more directly interact with our dream states. There are already mobile applications that attempt to detect the onset of REM sleep and then play specific soundscapes or verbal cues designed to encourage lucidity. And looking further into the future, researchers are exploring even more direct methods. These are not invasive implants, but gentle, external devices that might use focused, weak, electrical, or magnetic stimulation to encourage the kind of brainwave activity. For instance, the gamma waves associated with lucidity in the prefrontal cortex during REM sleep. The goal is not to control or program a dream, but simply to increase the probability that the dreamer will become aware and be able to gently guide the experience themselves. It is less about being the author of the dream and more about being a gentle editor. As we stand on this new frontier, we must, of course, walk with gentleness, wisdom, and a deep respect for the sanctity of our inner worlds. Our dream space has always been the last, true bastion of privacy, a sanctuary that is entirely our own. As these technologies become more powerful and more widespread, we will need to have thoughtful, quiet conversations about the ethics of their use. What does it mean for our private, inner world to become a space for optimization, for self-improvement, or, as some companies will inevitably try, for advertising? To learn the language of the dreaming brain is a profound opportunity, but with it comes the responsibility to protect that world from the noise and the pressures of our waking lives. Our relationship with our dreams is clearly evolving. For countless millennia, we have been passive observers of their strange and beautiful theatre. Now, we are learning how to become gentle gardeners, tending to the rich soil of our sleeping minds. The great challenge, and the great opportunity, will be to learn to do so with the lightest possible touch, to nurture our inner worlds without ever trying to conquer them. And this long journey, from the distant stars to the inner workings of the neuron, from our evolutionary past to our technological future, ultimately leads us back to the most profound and simple question of all. Who is the one that is dreaming? Long, long ago, in ancient China, there lived a wise and gentle philosopher named Zhuangzi. One night, he had a dream. In his dream, he was a beautiful butterfly with vibrant, painted wings, and he was flitting and fluttering about a sun-drenched garden. He danced from one fragrant blossom to the next, tasting the sweet nectar, feeling the gentle warmth of the sun and the soft kiss of the breeze. In that dream, he was completely and utterly a butterfly, happy and free, and he had no awareness at all of his existence as a man named Zhuangzi. Then, suddenly, he awoke, and as he lay there, he found himself to be undeniably and solidly Zhuangzi once again. But this awakening brought with it a profound and beautiful question, a question that has echoed through the halls of philosophy ever since. He wondered, was he truly Zhuangzi, a man who had just dreamt that he was a butterfly? Or was he, perhaps, a butterfly, who was now in that very moment dreaming that he was a man named Zhuangzi? Let us rest with this question for a moment. Let us not try to solve it, but simply inhabit its gentle, shimmering uncertainty. Feel the impossible lightness of being a butterfly. See the world not through human eyes, but through the 1,000 tiny lenses of an insect's eye, a world of pure colour, light, and fragrance. Feel the delicate, paper-thin wings carrying you on the air. There is no past, no future, only the joyful, present moment of being. And then, feel the slow return of weight, of substance, of memory, and the complex, beautiful burden of being human. Which feels more real? And how can we be absolutely unshakably certain? This question, which we might call the butterfly dream, is the poetic heart of what is known in Western philosophy as the dream argument. It is one of the oldest and most powerful tools that thinkers have used to explore the nature of reality and the limits of our own knowledge. The great Greek philosopher Plato touched upon it, and centuries later, the French philosopher René Descartes gave it its most famous form. Descartes sat by his fire one evening and considered the fact that he had often had dreams that were so vivid, so utterly convincing, that he had believed them to be real. He had dreamt of sitting by this very fire, in this very robe, feeling the very same warmth. And if a dream can perfectly mimic the feeling of reality, he asked, then how can he be absolutely certain that his current experience of sitting by the fire is not, itself, another elaborate dream from which he has not yet awoken? The dream argument does not claim that we are dreaming right now. It simply and gently points out that we cannot find a definitive, foolproof test to prove that we are not. It is a quiet, humble reminder that our senses, which are our only windows onto the world, can sometimes be beautifully and profoundly deceived. Beyond questioning the nature of reality, our dreams also invite us to question the nature of the self. The I who wanders through our dreamscapes is a most peculiar entity. This dream self has access to all of our memories, our deepest hopes, and our most secret fears. And yet, it is often a strangely passive and accepting version of ourselves. It can watch as the laws of physics bend and break, as people transform into animals, as the dead return to speak with us, and it rarely, if ever, pauses to question the sheer impossibility of it all. Is this dream self a purer, more authentic version of who we are, a self that is unburdened by the rigid, critical logic of the waking mind? Or is it a mere simulation, a hollow protagonist in a play with no audience? Perhaps the truth is that dreams challenge the very idea of a single, solid, unchanging self. They suggest that our identity is not a static object, but a fluid, narrative process. We are the stories that we tell ourselves, and every night in our dreams, we are exploring the unwritten, wild, and experimental drafts of that ongoing story. Zhuangzi's beautiful question may not have a final answer, and perhaps the profound wisdom of his story is that the point is not to find an answer. The point is to hold both possibilities in a gentle and creative balance. The question is an invitation. It is an invitation to live our waking lives with some of the freedom, the wonder, and the creative spirit of a dream, to not be so rigidly certain of the reality we think we know. And it is an invitation to approach our dreams with the gentle curiosity and the deep, questioning spirit of a philosopher, to see them not as meaningless noise, but as a rich and mysterious text about the nature of reality and the nature of ourselves. Both worlds, the waking and the dreaming, are real experiences. Both are profound, and both, together, make us who we are. And so, our long journey through the night is drawing to a close. The first light of dawn is on the horizon, and our ship is sailing gently back toward the familiar shores of the waking world. Can you feel it now? The quiet stirring deep within you, the slow and gentle return of weight to your limbs, the first, faint and distant sounds of the world outside, beginning to filter into your awareness. The dream is fading, like a beautiful and intricate mist in the warm light of the morning sun. Our long and peaceful voyage through the gentle dark is coming to its end, our small boat sailing back toward the familiar, sunlit shores of the waking world. We have travelled far on this journey, through the silent, star-dusted oceans of the cosmos, and deep into the intricate, chemical gardens of the brain. We have sat in the silent theatre of the mind and watched the strange and wonderful plays that it performs for us each night. We have come to understand that this nightly journey is not an escape from our lives, but a deep and profound engagement with them. It is a time of healing, of creativity, of connection, and of the quiet, diligent construction of the very self that is now preparing to awaken. Let us, for a final, quiet moment, remember the ports we have visited. We learn that our dreams are a cosmic echo, a place where the starlight of our own past is gathered and rearranged into new constellations. We discovered the wisdom of our own bodies in the silent theatre, the protective paralysis that keeps us safe while our minds are set free to roam. We marveled at the chemically painted masterpieces, the way the rising and falling tides of neurotransmitters can create worlds that are more vivid and emotionally resonant than reality itself. We saw our dreaming minds as a diligent librarian in a vast, moonlit library, carefully sorting and filing the memories of our day. We visited the primal evolutionary stage where our brains rehearse for the challenges of life, and the gentle, therapeutic workshop where the sharp edges of our most difficult emotions are smoothed and softened. We understood that dreams are the nightly workshop where the beautiful mosaic of our identity is assembled, piece by piece. We learned that they speak in a language older than words, the primal, symbolic language of myth and of art. And we saw them as an elegant, beautiful prism, taking the chaotic white light of our daily information and breaking it down into a meaningful, ordered rainbow. As we return to the shore, we may notice that the specific details of our journey, the strange plots and characters of our own dreams, are already beginning to dissolve. And this, too, is a gift. We do not need to remember the specific story of the dream for its vital work to have been done. The emotional healing, the memory consolidation, the creative insight, these are the precious cargo that the ship brings back to shore. The dream itself, the strange and fantastical vessel that carried this cargo, is allowed to peacefully fade away, leaving us not with the clutter of its bizarre narrative, but with the quiet and simple feeling of clarity that it has delivered. The purpose of the dream is in the dreaming itself. And so, as you lie here now, on the gentle cusp between the two worlds of sleeping and waking, perhaps you can feel a quiet sense of gratitude for this mysterious, powerful, and deeply compassionate part of yourself that works so diligently on your behalf every single night. To sleep is to trust in this profound, innate intelligence. It is to surrender to a process of healing and creation that is far wiser than our conscious minds can ever hope to be. Wherever you are in your own journey tonight, whether you are just beginning to drift off into the gentle dark, or are already deep within it, or are now slowly preparing to return to the light of a new day, I wish you peace. I wish you profound and gentle rest. And I wish you beautiful, healing dreams. Thank you so much for joining me on this quiet exploration. If you have found a moment of peace or a sense of wonder here tonight, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It is a small, quiet gesture that helps more souls who are searching for peace and gentle understanding to find their way here. Thank you for listening.